What is up, everybody? Welcome back. This is episode 154 of the Omnic Lab. We are returning on a little bit of a crazy schedule. I am moving in about a month from now, and Andres is gearing up for some crazy stuff as well as returning from vacation. So we have a nutty schedule that we're trying to pan out for the next couple months, actually, to make sure we can get you guys a show. But let's just jump into this week. This week, we are all talking all about Overwatch and strategy in the game. If you're new around here, that's what we do. We talk about strategies in Overwatch. We kind of take it as if we are in a lab, like kind of scientific method. My name's Rob. I'm patched in from a late Wednesday night here in Japan, and joining me as always is a fresh morning Georgia Peach, Andres Gomez. What's up, dude?
What's up? I'm glad to be back. I'm refreshed after being out for the weekend. I was out in Vegas with some friends. Nothing too crazy. I know what you guys are thinking, but no, nothing like that. We just ate a lot of good food and did some cool stuff around the place. But I'm glad to be back. I'll be talking some Overwatch. I've actually been playing a lot this week. I had the itch, so I've been playing nonstop with some of my friends. And today, we're here to talk about a very, very cool composition that has been popping up in the radar of a lot of people. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's called Clockwork Vendetta, and today is going to be all about it.
And just like goats, Clockwork Vendetta is the name of the team that has pioneered this strategy, and we'll be talking all about that here in a bit. They basically didn't drop a single match going all the way up through contenders and in EU, and then they made it to the contenders trials and took that by storm. So they're more than qualified to run the gamut, and they beat a academy team, a Paris Eternal, and they have hardly ever. I believe they said something like they've never scrimmed before with this squad, and they don't have a coach. So it was a pretty nuts run for them. Very skilled players, but let's get through some info dump real quick with our sponsorships and or announcements. So first and foremost is game night. We had a great success. While Andres was gone, we were able to run quite a few lobbies. It was super busy. Special thanks to our volunteer lobby hosts as well as my admin and moderators that were there to help me out this time around. It was a lot of fun. We actually had a shout out to Labosco, who casted one of these games. I didn't know that he was a caster for Contenders Trials, and I had a chance to go play a couple games with him for fun. Great turnout there. But this month's June 28th, last Friday of every month. But this week happens to fall on the 28th, so we will see you there. Don't miss it if you can help it. Andres is going to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on with our Patreon.
That's right. I'm sure if you guys have been listening to the show, you now know that at the $1.50 level for Patreon, you get coaching sessions. These have been pretty successful so far. I think I've done about 7 or 8 on the month of June already, so it's been super great. I've had a blast coaching for you guys. So far, it seems like you guys have gotten something out of it too. At least at the end of the sessions, you guys have been vocal and said, hey, I wasn't sure I was doing this, or I hadn't noticed I was doing that. So as long as we can get you there, to notice things that maybe you were noticing before, I'm super, super happy. And if you guys are at this level and haven't signed up for a coaching session, what are you waiting for? Let's do it. I know that not everybody has the right setup for it, and a lot of people have been asking me these questions, so I'm thinking I'm going to put together a guide on how the coaching session goes. But just so you guys have an idea, we do it through Discord. It's a live screen share, so you guys can go into any mode, competitive or quick play, or whatever it is that you're trying to practice, even like the practice range or a custom map, we can do that. But basically, I get to watch you play the games, and we have a conversation about them. For the most part, in the beginning, I let you play a little bit and see where I can help you. And then for the second part of the session, I'll be more in your ear, trying to remind you of the things that you should be doing. So far, this method has been working out pretty well. For those of you that don't have a system that is powerful enough, though, don't worry. We've worked around that with a couple of other people. They've recorded VODs on their own time and then just uploaded them online. And then we just do the session with the VODs. However,
Together.
yeah, together. Don't be too picky with the VODs if you want to do it this way. If you don't want to mess with Discord and any of that stuff, just try to record a session, games in succession.
Right.
Like whatever you play at that time, do like 2 or 3, upload those, and we'll go through them together and check out what we can analyze there. But yeah, so far so good. It's been working really well, and I've been enjoying it a lot. So hopefully you guys have been too. And sign up for it if you haven't, because it's a good time.
Additionally, Omnic Lab is presented in large part by Top Score Solutions, an esports-oriented community for business education, analytics, and developing businesses, services, orgs, as well as creating content around esports in general. They're here to help, not just Overwatch, Rocket League, Fortnite, CSGO, and many, many more. They've got you covered in even League of Legends, so in the MOBAverse. But you guys want to go check them out. They have their own esports business podcast on Podbean and iTunes, and they are called Top Score Solutions. So check out their website, topscoresolutions.com, and get a link to their Discord community. You can also message I Need Peeling in our Discord to get more information there and join the community and ask some questions there to get connected. Furthermore, we have our good friend, the Switch Fox, who is still up with stats on Overwatch League, as well as your personal accounts, similar to Overbuff. These are going to give you a little bit more detailed, or rather not detailed, but these are going to give you a little bit more specific things that they're going to do, comparing your stats with other people at your current rank and kind of put you in a system for each individual stat in a percentile, and it'll help you analyze what you should be doing to improve, and just another tool in your arsenal. You guys ready? Let's get into this thing. But before, actually, you know what? Andres, let's go on a quick E3 tangent. I just watched the E3 stuff the last couple days, and it has been straight fire for this next couple years.
It's been a fun E3. I'm kind of like sad that
it's been one of the good ones, man.
Yeah.
What is some of the stuff that you've been seeing that you liked so far?
I mean, I gotta go with the hype train and stick with Keanu Reeves telling everybody that they're breathtaking.
The cyberpunk. Yeah. Keanu Reeves is pretty good. I definitely am a Nakayama fan after seeing her present the oh wow, is the Ghostwise or Ghost, I can't even remember the name of it, but something Ghost Reapers type style thing for Tokyo, and she is the art director for Okami, and now she's a creative director for that thing. But that is just nuts. That game looks super creepy and very, very good, well done presentation.
Really,
also both
game.
of the people that did the presentation were Japanese non-native speakers, and it was really, really cool to see possible outcome for some of ALT's work here in Japan. So I was super pumped about that, with my career path kind of overlapping a bit with E3 this year. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like so much to show this E3 and tons of like cool games coming out. I was excited for the Sea of Thieves showcase. I think they were doing like this arena showcase and stuff. So I was looking forward to that. So I don't know. I haven't been disappointed by it, actually.
Yeah, they announced that they're currently developing a next part for Zelda Breath of the Wild expansion.
So is it like
they also
more
announced
dungeons or like more stuff, or is it just kind of like a little DLC?
It almost looks like there's a corruption underneath the castle of Hyrule, and it looks like Zelda chopped their hair off, and you can play as either of them in the expansion. But that would be pretty sweet.
I am loving that they keep expanding that game. It wasn't kind of like a set like title, but like they keep adding into it. Like the other day, I was watching my friend play, and he had the craziest like armor and stuff that now you can get. I was like, whoa, that looks cool.
Yeah, you have to check some of the VODs on my page, because I've got a lot of that too. It's on the DLC. You actually can get a motorcycle and power it with stuff. It's really, really fun.
Cool.
So anyways, that's just a few things. If you want to talk E3, Andres and I are always here in the Discord wanting to chat about that. I'm also pretty excited that they are having a new Dragon Quest hero and Banjo-Kazooie hitting Smash Brothers. It's super, super cool
Banjo-Kazooie
coming
is
out
coming to Smash Bros? No
in the
way.
fall. It's going to be sweet. Yeah, it was a
That's
huge
cool.
drop. All right, enough E3 spoilers for those of you who haven't seen it. Go check that stuff out on the YouTube page. And in addition, let's talk about Clockwork Vendetta. So Andres is the one who tipped me off to this, and then I spent the entire afternoon checking this out. And I have to say, Andres and I prepared separately for this, and I think that he's been trying to test it out with some friends on ladder as well. So he's getting more in-game testing and trialing, and also watching it.
Keyword trying.
Trying,
Yeah,
very
trying.
much. Yeah. And then for me, I watched all of the other footage, and I watched some of the I specifically watched some of the trials footage. They don't really stream a whole lot of the OD games. They're super hard to hunt down if you can find them. So that is not something that I was able to do, but I did sit down and try to figure out what the comp was, who the players were, try to learn their names a bit more. So let's run through that real quick, and then I'm going to have Andres kind of break down a few of the basics of the comp. We've included some links on our Google document. So if you can't find it on the YouTube page or whatever, just click through and try to find the Google Doc, and you'll find links to a quick video rundown that we grabbed from someone who did a very high quality 11-minute rundown of this, as well as a Reddit post to the Trials Contenders games. If you want to see it, I linked that. So the players, let's talk player names. We have Mini-Me is the Orisa. Moose is the Hog. The DPS players are Ricky playing Mei and Engineer playing Torb, as well as the supports are Monk Muta and Zytor. Zytor playing Zen Mercy, and Monk Muta playing Anna, Hanzo, and Widow on the flex. So that necessitates the question as what are the heroes, and just the heroes without their roster counterparts. So we basically are running double tank, double DPS, and 2 support. So it's a 2-2-2 setup with a flex slot into going 2-3-1. Okay, so the 2-3-1 setup is Orisa Roadhog, Mei, and Torbjorn. That's the core. And then the flex would then be Mercy Hanzo, Mercy Widow, or Zen Ana. And then the last flex is sometimes being used, and in other cases for more sustain was Ana Mercy. So Monk Muta is the one that's flexing to 3 different heroes, whereas Zytor switches off Mercy to Zen occasionally.
Yeah, interesting that the supports are the more flexible and swappable in the comp, while some of the others that you would normally expect to be the ones that you swap are almost like hard set, right? Like you have Mei and Torb being your main DPS players here, and almost never swap off of them unless you're trying to stall on the last point or something. But for the most part, that's what you got, and that's what you're working with.
Yeah, the only stall stuff that I was seeing was Wrecking Ball and Doomfist being popped in and out occasionally. And that wasn't even by anyone in particular. That was just like who's the first person to go back after
whoever
stall,
could get to them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Andres, what is this comp? What are some of the big keys for you? Kind of break it down from your point of view here before I go back to talking again.
Sure. This is a really interesting composition, and the reason why I wanted to highlight it in the show is because of something we talked about in the past, and is if you let a meta kind of linger around for long enough, you eventually start seeing these creative ways that people come up with trying to counter it, right? And this one is one of those compositions where, Goats, Bunker has kind of been around for a little bit. People are very aware of how to play these compositions. They're also aware of the weaknesses that these compositions have because, everybody plays them, right? So it's easy to kind of figure those out. And this comp is something that you wouldn't think would work this well, right? Like maybe you can pull this off in like a competitive game on the ladder or something, but you wouldn't think this would work at like competitive level, right? Contenders and stuff. But here we are.
That's fair.
These guys pulling it off because it turns out these heroes are very synergistic with one another. And on their own, they're all right. But when you put them together, they start doing some pretty cool stuff. It's a comp that really revolves around setting up your teammates and allowing them to exploit their full potential, right? Um, I would say the Orisa sort of acts like an anchor in this composition. She's the person who can contest, she's the person who can take control of an area. And then on top of that, she has the most useful tool for everyone in this team, which is Halt. With the Halt, you basically set up almost everyone in your team, right? You set up Roadhog to hook. You set up your May to freeze a bunch of people. You set up Torbjorn to just fire at them, or even use Molten Core, and May too to use her ultimate, right, and trap them all in it. You have Anna Grenade, right? They can just spam on them. So basically, you just set up with Orisa all the time, and you're allowing your team to take advantage of that. And then you have so much crowd control, right? If anybody tries to come contest you, they have to get through a Orisa, a May, a Torbjorn, a Roadhog, like so many heroes that can just mess up your day if you so much as are near them, right? So tons of crowd control, tons of setting up for each other. They're super hard to kill. Trying to kill a Mei just by herself is already pretty hard, but when you combine it with everyone else around it, it becomes even harder. Roadhog is super hard to kill. Torbjorn with the new what's
Overload.
the overload. His new overload used at the right times makes Torbjorn incredibly hard to kill. And not to mention that diving them or committing to any of them is super dangerous, right? Because everyone else around them is looking for that kill and is looking for you to close that gap so they can mess up your day. Um,
Yeah,
so
besides quad tank, we haven't really seen any other um compositions that kind of reflect a similarity to goats that is saying, look, if you're going to play dive, you're not going to win. And this comp does that. It's really weird. It's like if you're going to play dive against this comp, it's not that great. And goats is even worse, you know? So it's quite interesting how they set this up. But like Andres was saying, like sustainability is one of the kingpins of goats, and then they add the mobility of having Lucio existing in that comp, and they get enough damage from the Zen. This
and
comp
Zarya.
revolves around Zen and Mercy in Zarya. Yeah, exactly. But instead of working around a lot of the farming of ultimates very quickly, this comp also does farm ultimates relatively quick, and then they can catch people out constantly in varying ways. And on top of that, their sustainability is not in relying on 3 supports to heal them, but rather every hero has damage mitigation built into their kit. Orisa has the Fortify to cut in half damage. Roadhog's mobile take a breather mitigates damage and heals it once he gets around the corners. You have May who can wall off stuff with her wall and also heal herself with ice block, and Orisa's got her wall as well. And then Overload, like Andres was saying, gives you a crap ton of armor, mobility, plus more damage on top of that. So the only people that don't have mobility would then be Zen and Ana. And occasionally, if you're having an issue with that, then you just swap the Zen to a Mercy. And the reason that Zen and Mercy are existing in every single one of these compositions is because it just gives you that much more damage. In a meta where people are running these huge tanks, you want to be able to drop them quick, and you also want to win the shield battle against other teams that are trying to mirror you or trying to run their own versions of this comp.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth mentioning that the supports have to be the most flexible because, and it really depends on what you're going against. When you're going against things like goats or bunker, a composition that's very mobile and that you will see it coming, right? Like you know where they are, they're pretty obvious. Your go-to choices are the Zen and the Ana, right? Because your
Right.
backline is not gonna be super threatened. It's gonna be the last thing people get to, especially with the composition that you're running. So you
Exactly.
can get away with these very mobile heroes, but that bring in tons of utility with grenade and sleep dart, nano boost, transcendence, and then bring a ton of damage, right? Zenyatta just outputs an incredible amount of damage, and Ana can help you finish off long range targets as well.
Yeah.
That being said, and we'll talk about this later, the composition or the supports, this lineup of supports can really struggle when you go against more mobile or more long range damage compositions. So if you're talking about like triple DPS or Pharah or Ashe, Widowmaker, etc., your Zenyatta can be a little vulnerable, right? So changing it to a Mercy so that you can be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more squiggly, so they can get to you very easily, or changing your support, even Ana, to a Hanzo or Widowmaker to help you contest some of that long range um, kind of
Yeah,
threat.
the craziness of with having that amount of sustainable heroes in a composition is when you happen to add a Mercy into the mix and then add a DPS on top of that, that like solo healing this is not that hard. You're
Is
basically
not.
just maintaining the Orissa's health to a decent pool, using her for your ultimate and Roadhog for your ultimate, and then kind of just topping people off when you can while you're also damage boosting your DPS and enabling them. And even if you're damage boosting an Orisa, that machine gun racks up damage over time
Orisa
like
hits hard.
crazy.
Orisa hits pretty
Yeah.
hard.
And she just recently got it buffed. So I mean, you have to keep that in mind as well. But the other thing that Mercy does is just that res on a self-sustainable target is not to be ignored because you're getting your cooldowns back if you wait long enough. You know what I mean? And let's talk a little bit about the consistency of damage. This is something that interesting that I wanted to bring up and kind of rub off on you, Andres, and see how it hits your ears. Which is this composition. I think outside of a Widowmaker, which sometimes even hits this comp. I don't think that they've missed a single hero that has 0 damage fall off. Like the only one that makes sense that they didn't include is like the Zarya and the Symmetra balls. Like all of these heroes have no damage fall off.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because even though the composition is super killer at close range, that's where it excels the most. It's not bad at long range damage. Like if you can get decent with your Torbjorn and your Mei aim, like you said, they're both heroes
They
that have
one shot.
no fallout damage. So they can still contest heroes like Widowmakers or Ashes hanging out in the back, McCree's, Hanzo's. In fact, when you watch them play in contenders and in open trials, they get tons of kills on these DPS, and tons of players try to like counter this composition with the long range style. And they still kind of like go through them. So the amount of damage that this comp can put out, it's actually pretty astounding. Zen can do the same thing, right? You just have
Right.
basically damage at any range as long as you're hitting your shots.
This may actually, if you guys want to watch these contenders games, like for contenders trials, the May pops off in a lot of these fights and just does ridiculous things with super unconventional play methods, with which means kind of like they use the freeze on multiple targets just to build the ultimate to drop the blizzard and then start spamming icicles.
Mm-hmm.
There's other times where the May is kind of positioning perpendicular to the Roadhog or the Orisa halt. And one thing of note outside of this is to kind of circle back to the halt, because anytime halt is used or there's a hook sound, every single hero in this comp, like all of the players have like this sonar that like operates in their eardrums. When they hear that ability, they just turn and they all fire at the hook, and they all turn and fire at the at the halt. It's just like magnets or moths to a flame. Like they know something's going on or someone's calling it out. They say, I have hook ready or I have my halt ready. 2-1 fire. And like they all shoot. And like anytime that halt goes up, something's happening.
The halt is basically the green light for the team, and pun
Yeah,
intended.
exactly.
It's basically what sets everything up. And I've been playing a lot of Roadhog this past week, for example. And when you're playing Roadhog, halt becomes like eye candy. Like every time you see a halt, you're like, ooh, you get kind of like giggity a little bit. You're like, yes. And once you get the timing right, it's very easy to get kills or hooks. What is more important though is your Orisa having good halts. If the Orisa is firing them at the right altitude, at the right places with the right range, where other heroes can capitalize on it, getting people through corners and out into the open or above the Orisa shield where they can, get damaged. If your Orisa is doing that consistently, you don't even have to announce them that much, right? Like people are looking for those halts, and especially this team right now is like you said, they've conditioned themselves to look for the halt because they know it's an open opportunity, and so many of their heroes can capitalize on it. Good Annas will consistently do that as well. They see a good halt, they just fire the grenade at the center mass of the halt, and boom, they get like two, three people sometimes. Sometimes you get the whole team. If you pull the
Mm.
Reinhardt up, you can just sneak the grenade right below them and hit basically everyone, which against goats, for example, is just devastating, right?
Now let's transition a bit and kind of touch on ultimates. Because this is the one thing people are always asking about in any composition at every level. Like, how do I use these? And why are they synergizing? The thing about this team kind of overlaps with both positioning and setup, as well as what ultimates are being dropped and when. Um, I think the core understanding of this is how the team is very flexible with both bunkering up for a short time for the halt and then like spreading out like cockroaches right after. They do this a lot. It's almost like when the halt's up, everyone comes out of the woodworks and shows up behind the bunker or behind wherever the setup is. They hit it. They kind of make sure their Orisa's not dying, and then they spread and they flank. It's just like 5 flanks all the time. Like, or maybe not 5 flanks, maybe like 3 or 4 flanks. And then the turret is kind of stationed up with the Ana and the Orisa, and the Zenyatta is just trying to get some better angles. So pretty much all the time this is happening. And with that, when teams get to their ultimate zone, all of these ultimates are zoning ultimates in some way or shape or form, or can be used in that way. And even the team captain said a lot of the times the 2 DPS ults end up operating as basically giving the team 3 defensive ultimates. And when you can deny that much space, as well as deny that zone control, and have abilities that also zone control, ain't nothing happening. Like if you look at it this way, you've just won the team fight, and the enemy team is going to come back on a payload map to come in and contest. And there's generally only 2, maybe 3 entrances to get to where you are to contest the point, right? What happens is they wait to see you, then they blow the Torbjorn ultimate and they dump all of the fire in one area, and then they wall off the other entrance. Nobody's coming in. There's no way for you to get to the point where you can contest. And then should you play a wrecking ball just to get the contest and roll out, Roadhog's waiting there for your hook. And he's just going to push you right in there. And the May's going to go over there and freeze you when you're coming through the Torbjorn smash, Molten Core. And the reverse is true on the other side. Maybe the Torbjorn and the Roadhog are setting up somewhere else to zone out one door, and the May is ready to go and Blizzard's the other one. So this isn't even like the best use case of these ultimates. This is just showing how flexible these ultimates can be used in pretty much any way.
Yeah, and I love that you're pointing this out because it's one of those things that takes some time and really takes reading of the meta and how people are playing the game to start using ultimates like this, right? Um, Sorry, my throat is kind of a little itchy, scratchy today.
That's all right.
But it's super true. Like the way that you use your ultimates, you can use it as an aggressive, hey, I'm gonna like go kill them right now, try to freeze them, try to molten core on top of them, or you can use them as a deterrent, right? When they come crashing against you, and especially teams like goats, which is what they've been really successful with in trials, and what basically other teams have noticed they can't play against this composition is goats. Because the second you come in crashing and try to collapse on that Orisa, on the Roadhog, or any of the DPS, you throw one of these ultimates out, and it's basically you can't hang out in here. Like you said, you're either gonna get frozen or you're gonna get melted with lava, kind of thing. And then when you pair it up with all the damage that they can do at close range with the Roadhog, the Torbjorn, the Orisa, it becomes super dangerous. And using this ultimates as that deterrent, it's actually really creative, and I really like the way that they're kind of like thinking about the game.
And they're also utilizing the defensive ultimate that they do have, which is Zenyatta's. When Zenyatta gets his ultimate for Transcendence, it's a lot of times used to kind of like save someone as well as push through a fight. And a lot of people at other ranks know that Zenyatta does his ultimate and can do things like clear mines from something or body block somebody's damage, right? But in this case, a lot of the times the Zenyatta is used to kind of shore up weaknesses when the enemy team is going to actually do something. It's basically like, okay, if the enemy team's got the ace in the hole, how are we going to block that? And Zenyatta's kind of your last line of defense. And he's able to farm Transcendence remarkably fast. And in some cases, that means the similar things that you're going to be seeing in GOATs has happened with this comp, where you kind of just throw out Transcendence when your team has a weak point. Both the walls down, your Orisa barriers down, you don't have a hog hook, your hog's about like two players are about to die, or you're playing the Zen Mercy version and you're like, well, my Mercy needs to get in there and heal up. Now the Zen Mercy version's not there, but to get the res, usually it's Mercy or Zen in that case. But you can stack damage buffs too, so you can use your Valkyrie and your Supercharger, and that is a very big deterrent for people to coming in because they're just getting deleted as if your entire team is Bastion. They just group up and push in, you're dead. So this team is crazy. It's just like GOATs. It feels like, their neutral game is super powerful. If you're not maintaining a couple disciplines that you have, which is turret management, making sure that you're not focusing the Roadhog as much as possible, and then when he does get out of position, everyone just like swivels their head and kills him. Like this comp is really, really hard to deal with if it's being run properly. And then there are so many times where I feel like this team is super undisciplined with how they're doing some of their ultimates. And half of the time it actually ends up working in their favor, which is the craziest thing.
We didn't mention this before, but this is not like a super established practice team that, next level coaches or anything like that. No, this is a group of friends that happens to be really good at these heroes that was like, hey, let's play together and let's see how far we can get. And it turns out they made it all the way to contenders from open division, just by playing this weird amalgamation of heroes. And sometimes it takes somebody like that, right, to make everyone aware, like, hey, this is a composition that might actually work. And to be fair, it hasn't been tried at the highest levels, right? We haven't seen how this would do in Overwatch League, for example. And I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon, just because they're too afraid to try any of these crazy stuff, because they're playing for some big money over there and for jobs.
And it's also possible that they may not have the same level of proficiency to these heroes that these other guys are comfortable on. Guys and girls are comfortable playing.
Yeah, that's fair too. That being said, the composition works really well, and it's something that you can definitely pull off in the ladder. If you've always had that Torbjorn friend that you never wanted to invite to your six stack, or
everyone's got like that friend.
Yeah,
apparently.
Now is the time. Now is your time, Torbjorn friends, to shine. Everyone's gonna want you to try out this composition. No, I'm just kidding. Torbjorn is a really fun hero, and he's really powerful, actually, and really shines in this comp.
It's more likely that you have the one friend that doesn't play Roadhog. That's the harder one to find in most cases.
Yeah.
There's usually someone that wants to have fun on tour, but not so much on Roadhog.
That being said, let's talk about the consistent damage, right? Let's talk about a little bit about the crowd control, because not only do they have some amazing ultimates that you can use to zone out that are really powerful. One of the most powerful tools that the team has, and we haven't talked about it, is May's wall. And it's super important that whoever is playing May in the composition has a really good sense of when to use this wall and to be using it consistently, because just like Halt, the wall sets up for a lot of plays for you. A really creative way that people have been using the wall for a while now, but it's becoming a little bit more standard even in the ladder. I've noticed is walling of the main tank, the Reinhardt. Um, as soon as the team is going to approach you, as soon as they're trying to close the gap, if you can wall between the Reinhardt and their backline, basically denying any heals on the Reinhardt, any shields maybe from the Zarya, and he's basically left alone just to tank everyone else. And then is your chance to close the gap, right? Then as May, you can go freeze him, and then the rest of your team will just do quick work of him after that. So it's really good to kind of like separate and segregate teams like that and just pick up targets. And just like your ultimates, it can be a way to deny a zone. You can just block off an entire choke point or an entire entrance so people can't really walk through there. You can use it to block off an Orisa, for example. If you're going against other bunker comps, you can wall in front of the Orisa or like on top of her shield, and basically they're walled off from their vision, and your team now has some breathing time to either close the gap yourselves or to reposition and keep moving around the map. So the wall is very significant in this composition, and using it correctly is vital to making it work.
There's also something interesting that I want to do some more research on because I'm not quite sure how the integration with the two work, which is nano boosting your maze. Because I generally think that it's probably best to nano boost the Torbjorn or the Orisa for the heal, or the Roadhog for the heal, plus on top of that type of an idea. However, I wondered if the speed rate of fire increase for heroes, that if you give that to Mei, does that increase the rate by which things freeze because the spray is going out faster?
I'm not sure. I don't play May enough to have been nano boosted
So
before, but it
that's something I
might.
want to go double check on my sources, and if you're out there, or maybe I'll go ping Jardio and ask him. But
Yeah, the ticks might increase. I will say though, in this comp is worth nano boosting almost anyone.
anyone.
Yeah, whoever needs it at the time, you're good to go.
And not to forget, but I don't know if a lot of people know this interaction to be true, because this is actually a recent change. But just as a reminder for you May players out there, or people learning May, you can spray through people now, and the freeze effect will apply to both. So if I'm spraying the Orisa and they're bunkering up behind that Orisa shield, and you're spraying them with your primary fire, it will freeze everything in the pathway, not just the one target that it happens to hit first. Furthermore, the other thing that Andres brought up about the wall, you can use it offensively, meaning you can use it to get to places where you're chasing. You can also do this thing where you flank to get a freeze, and then as soon as the main tank or whoever it is that you're freezing is ready to go, if they're behind a shield, that's great. Put your wall under them, fire them straight up just like a halt, and then your Roadhog can hook them and kill them. Your enemy or your allies can go and headshot them on the top of the wall because they're frozen and they can't move. I've seen that. Like, they don't show Ricky's POV very often, but every time that they've done like any crazy plays that he's done, I've seen him do that exact move. And usually it's during a blizzard or during like a multiplayer freeze, and they put him on top, and the Orisa is usually the one up there, and they just destroy her in like a second. Like, you
Hmm.
have so much damage, and you displace her, and you're saying, I'm walling the Orisa straight up, kill her, and boom, everyone just swivels over and kills her.
Yeah, the wall is another setup play. If they're behind the bunker or a bastion behind the bunker, you can
Yep.
raise them above the shield, and that poor bastion now has to face hooks.
Sleep
Torbjorn
darts.
shooting him, sleep darts, grenades. You name it. Just remember, this composition is all about setting up your team. Everything is very synergistic, and the heroes by themselves are not that scary. I mean, a May can sometimes be scary, a Torbjorn can sometimes be scary, but they're counterable. But when you're combining it with this kind of like everyone else doing these things around you, it's really really hard to kill them, and they're really
So
powerful.
Andres, let's actually use that, because we want to talk about what are the weaknesses here. What are some things that have been shown in the trials area for contenders where we're actually seeing some kind of resistance? Players are getting denied. Maps are being taken, rather not like full map scores, but maybe like 1 point of Ilios, or they're losing one, they're dropping maps here and there.
Mm-hmm. So far there has been some attempts to kind of like defeat them, and I think Paris Eternal, not Paris Eternal from Overwatch League, sorry, Eternal Academy, which is their division in Contenders, actually got really close to showing how you can defeat this composition. They were using a combination of 3 DPS with a Pharah, an Ashe, and guys like Hanzo, for example, or Pharmacy. And it turns out that when on open maps where you can have a lot of long range damage and you can really abuse your Pharah, for example, or your Ashe, you can really put a lot of pressure in this composition, right? Because even though Mei and Torbjorn can deal significant damage at long range, you still can't contest, a hit scan that is also a really good aim that has a ton of range from you. They can pick angles that is also beneficial for him, right? They're gonna be able to bypass your Orisa shield. They're gonna be able to bypass your wall. Eventually, your cooldowns are going to be down. Your Mei, ice block, your Torbjorn overload, and they're gonna get that
Their
damage
shield
in.
break is just so fast. It's
Yeah, you can
unreal.
also break the shield down really fast, so you're not gonna be able to hide for very long. That being said, it's very map dependent as well, because even though we
Yeah.
saw Eternal Academy have some success on like the really open maps where they can overrun them very easily, as soon as they would get to more close quarters, let's say Eichenwald, they would struggle on point one and point two of Eichenwald. But as soon as they got to point three and you were back into the castle, back in close quarters, you can really abuse this composition again. And then that's where you would see Clockwork Vendetta kind of like pull it out again. And I believe that
Those
they ended
tight
up
spaces
winning.
are so good for May. It just ends up being like a lockdown. You just can't put it's kind of like the same thing happened to them on what's the map? Junkertown. Like you get to that final point in Junkertown, and that last like
Hmm.
30 yards is just straight torture. And they basically full held them to overtime and then blocked them from capping in the very final point, and they pushed it all the way and they won the game. And it was in overtime too. Like these games are not against the Paris Eternals Academy team. They were really close games. Like this is not like a landslide victory by any stretch. I mean, the Paris's ACAD team, their Hanzo player was absolutely disgusting. Like he was deleting them regularly. And the like you said, Andres, that Farah is a nuisance for this team. It's so hard for them to deal with because they have so many different projectile heroes. Even the best projectile heroes in Overwatch League have problems landing shots on a fully pocketed pharmacy. It's super hard to kill.
Absolutely. That being said, though, and it's why we're bringing this comp up because I think it's solid enough to stand even against its weaknesses. And that's usually what's the mark of a solid composition, right? Is why Goats,
Right.
for example, gets played all the time. Because, yeah,
Hmm.
Goats loses against long range and against like triple DPS, kind of super mobile comps as well. But the problem is that it takes them so long to lose to this composition that it usually the damage is done and you've been able to get away with winning the point anyway at that by that time. So this composition kind of has the same effect in where it can kill a lot of compositions and even the counters to this composition struggle against it, right? Even the trying to go full counter, full, long range, full damage is not good enough sometimes. And you can still pull it off against these compositions, which makes it really solid and really stable, and why we might be seeing a little bit more of it. Um,
Now on ladder, the reason that I think this is a good strat for ladder, regardless of skill, running this composition, is because this comp thrives on chaos. Like there's only one thing the teams have to pay attention to, realistically, is halt. When halt's going, if everyone can pay attention for that little blip of time, you're basically increasing your RPMs and your ability to run this comp effectively. And then the comp it gets even better when you're starting to revolve around other abilities like your hook, like your sleep dart, like the Maywall, you know what I mean? And zoning properly. Like the comp has a very high skill range, but the thing about the comp is that the very bottom level of integrating this into team play
It's
is
not
pretty
super
easy.
hard. Yeah, it's not
It's
super
just
hard to
super
play.
chaotic, and that's how you play it. It's not like goats where it's like this requires 6 people to coordinate effectively. And if you have one team that's coordinating a little less than the other team, that team's just going to win. Like the better coordinated team and the better disciplined team with ultimates and effective use of everything is generally just ended up better
This
on the
comp definitely
top
still
end.
requires some coordination, and you do have to be
Yeah.
aware that you're playing for the team. The reason why you're so strong is because of everyone else around you enabling you to
Hmm.
do these things. That being said, everyone in this team has a panic button. Everyone in this team has a defensive cooldown. So playing it, yeah, at any level, I think it's fine.
And it's fun.
It's not like dive, for example. That I think that dive does require a certain degree of proficiency in the game to be able to even pull it off
Hmm.
and not look like a fool. Just
Yeah,
because you have
sure.
to have like coordinated dives, you have to be precise where you're like landing. If you mess up your cooldowns, you will probably die, kind of thing. But with this one, you're not taking any of those like super risky positions, and you don't have to be ultra precise with all of your abilities because all of your abilities tend to be more crowd control-y and AoE, right? Like you're doing damage in an area with a lot of these heroes.
Right.
Orisa is just kind of like a lot of spray. Uh, Torbjorn has like a shotgun style close range, same as
Hmm.
Roadhog. May have your spray as well. So close range are very lethal. Now, getting the most juice out of your heroes will require some mechanics, right? Getting the timing with your May alternative fire so you can get those headshots. Getting the tracking down with your Orisa so you can actually dish insane amount of damage and being able to capitalize on her halts with hook, right? Like you gotta be able to nail down that timing. So with a lot of the abilities, it does require some coordination and some timing, but yeah, it's a very forgiving composition.
For sure, for sure. And the other thing too is I've noticed that the team has a lot of struggle points, especially against that Ash that Paris whipped out. Mainly because the team could basically punish what they were doing if they used any of the cooldowns in which that you need to deal with Bob. Like they would basically just wait for that or wait for the team to blow a couple things and throw Bob in just for an extra contester on the point or an extra unit to have to deal with and use cooldowns on. Even though Bob was usually sufficiently dealt with and didn't really do a whole lot in these team fights, the fact that he was there was a problem enough to deal with. And so if he's eating cooldowns, that means your teammates aren't. So that's usually what his use case was against that squad. In addition, the dynamite burning is so annoying for teams like this to deal with when you have a bunch of self-sustaining heroes and the only thing that clears it is a health pack or being sustained healed through it with like a Lucio or a Brigitte or even a Moira. All three of those heroes don't work with this comp. And so you don't have access to that kind of healing to help you there. And so Ash's dynamite is extremely effective against this team like this, especially when you've got justice raining from above on top of being burnt with dynamite and the enemy team throwing random bobs at you just all the time because you're always burning. It's super easy to land dynamite on this team because of the
And
mobility
dynamite is one of
issues.
those abilities that might make you use a cooldown on the spot, right? Where you don't want to
Exactly.
use it. Normally, you want to save your cooldowns, to protect yourself from other players and land you a kill, like turn the tides of battle, right? Like
Hmm.
when you think you're gonna kill the Mei, she ice blocks, then she comes out of the ice block and they collapse on you and they kill you, kind of thing. When you
Yep.
dive the Torbjorn, he goes into overload and instead he kills you, etc. Right? Like you're using this defensive
Right.
ultimates to turn the tides of battle, but if you can force him to use his ultimates before that commitment, right? Before you go in and do your thing, you're already kind of like a little bit ahead of them. The last thing I wanted to mention with this comp is you have to be really careful with your positioning. This comp is very reliant on positioning and good game sense because you're a little bit static. You have no speed boost or anything like that. You can get too crazy with your mobility. You can't make really wide flanks or disappear for a really long time. You can't hang out in the open if it's not for a really good reason, taking unnecessary damage and having to pop up your cooldowns in the inappropriate time. You're almost trying to lure your enemy into you most of the time, or not allow him to get away from you using things like halt, like Maywall, like the hook, and bring him on into your team. Because for the most part, you don't have a lot of mobility, like we said. So if you get separated from your team, you're not getting back to them easily. If you get singled out, it can be pretty bad too. If you have to use your Maywall to just kind of like avoid people and get out, but nobody can capitalize on it, it can be pretty detrimental as well. So just keep that in mind. And positioning is a lot in how you're going to win. Play around walls, bring him into choke points where you can halt them easily, or block him with a May wall. Allow them to come into you and then separate them. Don't go by yourself a little too long. Even though, like you've said it before, Rob, it makes sense to flank from different times, but it's very like short and very precise flanks, right?
It's
Before you come
planned
back.
chaos.
Yeah, planned chaos where you kind of like spread out for a little bit, but then you're back to your core very soon.
Yeah, like we were saying, like you're basically spreading out and flanking on specific cooldowns. When stuff's down, you can go out and about and do crazy stuff. The other thing that is kind of an X factor here is when this comp is played with Mercy Hanzo or Mercy Widow is actually quite different than when it's played with a Mercy Ana or Ana Zen. That setup is way different. You play riskier, you're playing for reses, you're playing for really crazy stuff. And in addition, the Hanzo is getting you a lot of room to work because you're basically using all of the damage for shield break, and then you're always ahead because you have a Mei and an Orisa to shield break as well as halt for devastation to get behind the shield if they run their own Orisa or if they're running a Reinhardt, for example. You're always this is why the game is so, or why this team comp is so much, has so much threat for people playing goats. Because goats pushes into you, you start slowing them down, you halt them, you slow them down again, you split them up with a wall, you kill them. And you have a shotgun on Torbjorn if they push even into you real tight. And with the Mercy and the Zenyatta, you have one target that you can focus down and they're just dead, no matter if they're a tank or not. So the team has a lot of flexibility in that respect. But again, it's really great for us, I think, as a community to have goats for so long because we're really sitting down and realizing that you and I don't know why this is, Andres, but I feel like you and I playing goats versus watching other people play goats and seeing that disparity for some reason finally clicks with the community that not everyone can play the same thing and do it well. It's so much easier to realize how people are getting completely dumpstered with this comp. Whereas when you're watching like Dive, it looks so incredibly complex and really hard to do mechanically that a lot of people get distracted by the flashy plays and the distractions and the setup and the ability uses, that because all of these little mistakes are in there and it's harder to identify, these teams running the exact same mirror comps for so long, it's not, it's really hard to see the difference between the two. But then when you run goats, the minutia little details can result in like a like 6-player team wipe, and it's super easy to see. So it's really cool to see that how people are recognizing, the pros can go sit down and go play this comp, and then I can go sit in my rank games with my friends that I play with all the time, and we can't even get close to that. You know what I mean? And it's not even, it is a mechanical issue for sure, but it's not the only issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, honestly, the latter feels pretty diverse right now. I see more
Yeah, it does.
bunker than I ever see goats. In fact, goats is kind of rare to see at this point. You're seeing a lot
Unless
of
you're playing
May.
6 stacks all day.
Actually, I have been seeing a lot of May, not only in like this style of like clockwork composition,
Mm-hmm.
but I've just been seeing it in general in a lot of my games. And I think The characters like Torbjorn and May, have been a little bit dormant for a while, but they're coming to a point where like people have used them enough. People have been an established kind of like meta for a while, so they're been finding creative ways to use these characters, and it turns out that
Yeah.
they fit really well right now. And people are getting a lot of juice out of them. And Kristen, my girlfriend, was asking me the other day, like, "Hey, who's a character that never gets played?" And I was trying to like think about it in the competitive, and I was like, I don't know. Like I feel like I see almost every character in at least a few of my games. Like you can still say maybe Symmetra is a little rare, but like I see Symmetra all the time.
Yeah, I'd say like Symmetra and Roadhog are kind of on the low end. Honestly, I think the one here I see the least has been Winston, ironically enough.
But then again, Winston, you see him all the time too. Like even the heroes that you see little of is more because there's so much choice, right? That sometimes you don't get to see them
Yeah.
because you might run a wrecking ball instead. But like last
I
night, we
mean,
were
you
playing a session and I
you
was
play five
playing.
games, you're gonna probably see the whole roster.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
what I'm saying. Like you play 5 games, you're gonna see probably every hero that's out there.
Exactly.
So I don't know. Right
Yeah.
now, it just feels like so diverse and like you can do so many things. There's things like goats, but there's also dive. There's things like Clockwork Vendetta comp, but then there's also your bunker, traditional bunker style. Then there's like crazy Doomfist and Sombra compositions as well. So I don't know.
I've been even seeing some really interesting stuff if you're curious about it, Andres. I don't know if I can't remember where I saw it, but it was basically running a 222 that is kind of set up like goats where you're running, that type of sustainability tanking and the sustainability supports, but they use a Doomfist to punch the enemy Reinhardt out of the way for a shatter. And you're basically playing a defensive off tank Doomfist.
And at this point, it was what you were saying. It really relies more on the strengths of the people that you're playing with, right? And sometimes when you're playing with a bunch of randos or you're just solo queuing in the ladder, it's a little bit harder because every round you're gonna be going with different people, and you don't really have the
Sure.
time to assess like who's good at what. But if you like yesterday, I was playing with a 4 stack for the longest time, and then we ended up playing with 6 at the end of the night. But even with three
Uh-huh.
or four people, you can already like form some of these strategies and kind of like play to your style, right? If you have
Yeah.
like a sick Doomfist player, then enabling him and playing a composition that enables him might get you those wins. Yesterday we were playing with a sick Genji player, and Genji technically has fallen out of the meta. If you're looking at pro Overwatch, you would say Genji is dead right now. But he's not in the latter where like you can exploit the strengths of your player, right? And constantly like nano boosting him, giving him shields and all that stuff, which is getting us would win us the entire battle.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or just keeping
Right.
him alive for a little bit. Um, so yeah, it's more what is your team and the people you're playing with good at, and can you find a style to make that work? Because these guys are making the weirdest composition work at a pretty decently high competitive level. Like we're talking about contenders over here, which is not Overwatch League, but is the closest right now
It's the
in
next step
competition.
down.
Yeah.
It's also really encouraging to see support players flex like this on people because as a the type of player that really enjoys playing Ana and seeing this guy like pull out his Widowmaker and pull out his Hanzo, I was like, dude, that's my jam right there. I'll pull out the Hanzo, I'll show him who's boss. That's what I'd like to do. I was like, okay, I need to have Andres sit with me for like 3 hours and so I can learn how to improve my Widowmaker on this ping, and then I'll probably be set. Because my Widowmaker is probably one of my worst heroes for whatever the reason is, but my Ashe is decent enough and my Hans is pretty darn good. I have gotten compliments every game night at some point, or rather having compliments from the other end of the spectrum saying "f you" because you shot me, which is honestly more flattering in some ways. I
There you
guess you
go,
could say.
dude. You're 2/3 of the way there.
Yeah, I just gotta learn one more hero and I could just play this comp. All right,
I
guys.
do
I
like that
think
they feature that in the support. Sorry, because yeah, you don't see that
yeah,
often. Where like the supports are like the flex spot, going into like the carry DPS as well. while everyone else stays in like this weird heroes like Torbjorn and May. I
Hmm.
do love that.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep practicing more May because I got that bubble tea skin, and that's the best. So just shooting bubbles at people is pretty great. All right. Let's thank a few people over at patreon.com/Omnic Lab for sponsoring us. At the top level, we have Top Score Solutions, Refire, Bunk Plays, Meow Schmow. He's just gonna enjoy. I think he made this name just to troll me, but I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Actually,
um,
one of the people I was coaching mentioned that he had signed up for Patreon a while ago, and we mentioned his name, and we just like completely butchered it. And then the next week, his friend also joined Patreon, and we mentioned his name, and we also completely butchered it. So apparently, we're good about talking about Overwatch, but not so good at pronouncing
if
names.
you
So
if you want to help me out, just spell your name like it would be in Japanese pronunciation. I'll probably get it. But if it's
just
if
get
it's Germanic,
ready.
I can't do it.
Just know if you sign up for Patreon, your name is going to be
It's
butchered.
it's
Just
gonna
be ready.
happen. It's gonna happen. You might as well just do what this guy did. This is meow meow and know that I'm not gonna get it right. Also, special thanks to Shazir, who gave us not only his Patreon support like normal, but he donated 1,000 bits to the stream at twitch.tv/OmnicLab. Thank you so much for that. We are affiliates there. You can catch our live streams. Our schedule's a little wonky, but we're going to get it sorted probably after this summer, and I have a new schedule, and Andres and I get ready to go with our next setup there. Also, Shepard and Crimson Fail, as well as Roger B, Christoplaya, and Tragic Zach. We have new Patreons this week or last 2 weeks. Shane I, Zach L, and Shire Daddy, or Sure Daddy, depends on how you want to say that. But again, I'm going to butcher it, so you're welcome. And you guys are great. And just a reminder, if you want coaching sessions, they're really fun for us and also really fun for you. Hopefully, we've gotten nothing but positive feedback on them so far. We're looking to improve our coaching ability. So we do, if you are new to us and new to the Patreon, we do ask that you are a little patient with us, but we're still learning and trying to improve our coaching ability as well. Also, we have an iTunes review. Andres, you want to read this one real quick? It's nice and short.
Yeah,
By
this one comes from
BRez05.
BRez05. Thank you so much. You devote so much time to this, and I am so thankful. Well, we are thankful that you are thankful because, yes, we do put a lot of time into this. So just having someone else think that this is valuable to them is all that we need to make it worthwhile for us. So thank you so much, guys, for the support. Also, quick mention if you guys are still hanging around, some people brought to our attention that we had only 25 episodes popping up in our feed. You could only see like the last 25 episodes or so. That should be fixed now. And for everyone who has been wanting to go back to the backlog and check out one of the older episodes or some of the going deeps, you should be good to go in all of your podcasting apps of choice. We do have
Including
a full
Spotify.
archive. Yeah, we do have a full archive on our website and on Libsyn, so you can find those there as well. But that being said, you should be set to go.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a hiccup where we had to set it to that when we switched over to our new setup and didn't ask Libsyn what we should have done to move it back. So we have that all sorted now. We figured it out. Thank you for all of you guys that have been hounding us to get that checked because we thought that it was
thanks for
on their
mentioning
end.
that, actually.
So we really appreciate that from you guys.
We hadn't noticed ourselves, so thank you so much for being on the lookout there.
Absolutely. Additionally, we'd like to thank Spotify, or not Spotify. We'd like to thank those of you who are supporting us on our Twitch feed. We are affiliates, so if you want to sub to us or throw us some bits, that's the best way to do it. Twitch.tv/OmnicLab. You can get notifications in the Discord. Join the community, hang out with us, join game night, all that jazz. Andres, let's close out the show. Where can people find you on the internet?
If you don't want to find me, you can do so on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
You're going to find me. I'm on Twitter at the tag NotRob and NotRobMay on Twitch. I also have NotRob on Instagram if you want to see some fun photos from Japan. We'll see you guys next week for episode 155. If you have any suggestions on guests and or topics, please let us know. If you're curious, we're in a little bit of a dry patch for news and all that jazz, but we are kind of on the tail end of an event and probably having some new cool stuff with Overwatch League happening in the next coming weeks that we can talk about. But if you have something, send us a line, talk to us in Discord. We'll see what we can do. Alrighty, we'll see you next week. And remember, don't be your lab rat, be a scientist. We will see you on the next week of June. Adios.
I have nothing more to teach you. The rest you must learn for yourself. Walk in harmony, my student.
Shaz, thanks so much for the gift for everyone. Shaz is the man.
Oh, is that a gift for like people in the chat?
I think so.
Dang, dude. Nice. Thanks, man.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye.